Russian Attack is one of those games that just never ended up on my radar as a kid. The original arcade version came out in 1985, and it was ported to various systems including the Nintendo Entertainment System by Konami in 1987. I didn't even get my NES as a Christmas gift until 86 or 87, I think. I'm not even sure. The carbon dating results aren't back yet, but that was from that era of time when the only time I'd get a new game was Christmas or birthdays. I don't even remember seeing Russian Attack for rent anywhere. Well, I found a boxed copy of it in the basement of the house my wife and I moved into a few years ago, so better late than never, right? The first thing I notice is the box art and especially that title. It's obvious this game came out at the peak of the Cold War, but they couldn't outright call it Russian Attack. That's just hilarious. The Japanese and European versions of this game were titled Green Beret for what it's worth. This guy is getting ready to blow someone away with a rocket launcher and he's really happy about it. Like really happy about it. The game gets right to it. Just a simple throwaway line at the beginning about destroying the enemy's secret weapon and then it throws you right into the fray. The manual gives a little bit more information and says you're supposed to be rescuing American POWs, but that aspect of it never really seems to get mentioned anywhere in-game. Also, this game has a few differences with the arcade version, such as 2 extra levels, and there are also some differences between the Famicom and USA releases. Yeah, the version we got in the West is definitely what you'd call Nintendo hard. While both versions are difficult, the Famicom version gives you 3 continues and when you die, you just respawn right where you died, whereas in the USA version, you get no continues and you have to restart from earlier in the level. Oh boy. And yes, this game is really frustratingly, annoyingly difficult. So it's pretty straightforward side-scrolling action, run to the right, kill or avoid anything that moves, but you jump by pressing up on the D-pad, and the A and B buttons are reserved for your standard attack or if you're lucky enough to pick up separate weapons such as a missile launcher or grenades, but even when you do get those, you only get 3 shots and then that's it. Jumping with up can be a bit awkward too, especially if you're trying to jump forward. It's manageable, but just takes some time getting used to. Your main weapon is just a knife, with pretty minimal range, and of course it's one hit and you're dead. Enemies swarm from all over the place, and although most of them look alike, they have different abilities. Some of them just run right into your knife, and some of them fire weapons. The most annoying ones are the guys that do a flying kick. You've got to be in just the right spot to counter the kick with your knife, or you're dead. I felt like you're actually better off if you try and jump and meet them in the air with your knife. But if you get a screen full of these guys, plus a couple dudes shooting at you from the guard towers, then it could make for a really short game. There's also some boss fights. You've got some dudes wearing jetpacks or a vicious horde of guard dogs. The best thing you can do is keep moving. Don't stay in one spot for too long. You don't have to take out every enemy on screen either. If there are multiple levels to the stage, like climbing up on top of these trucks, there's no shame in just running over all the bad guys. Also, don't hang around near the edge of the screen too long or that happens. So, is this game still fun to play today? Well, that depends. It has some redeeming qualities. The graphics aren't half bad when you factor in this was released pretty early in the NES's lifespan. Yeah, the backgrounds are static with no fancy parallax scrolling, but you can tell what everything is supposed to be, like with this airport and the harbor. I actually thought the airport looked really cool with all this stuff off in the background. Also, when you compare the NES version side by side with the arcade version, the NES port holds up solid. And then there's the music. Konami always had some great music on the NES, and the soundtrack for Russian Attack definitely holds its own. There are some really great tracks here. But man, this game is hard. There's a fine line between a reasonable and enjoyable challenge and just being downright frustrating, and I'd say Russian Attack spills into the latter category more often than not. There are fleeting moments of joy when you finally manage to figure out the right sequence of jumps and stabs to get through a particularly difficult part of the stage, only to have your hopes and dreams crushed out of nowhere and you have to do it all over again. If I had to describe this game in one sentence, I'd call it the beta test version of Contra. It's like they made this and then fixed everything that was wrong with this and made Contra a little later, balancing out the difficulty, adding in a projectile weapon, and adding more special weapons that you can use for longer periods of time. The good news is, Russian Attack is cheap. If you buy it and hate it, you're only out like $5 or $10. Just know what you're getting yourself into here. What did you think of this one? Did you play Russian Attack recently, or did you have this one growing up? What are some of your other favorite Konami titles you'd like to see covered here? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.